Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Lauren Smith. Lauren is an author, speaker, and host of the Date in Peace podcast. Combining her own personal success story with her professional mindfulness training, Lauren empowers singles to ditch the dating struggle and claim the loving relationship they so deeply deserve. She is the creator of the MettaDate Journal mobile app and author of the Mindful Dating Journal, Find a Healthy Love That Lasts. Well, Lauren Smith, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you?
I'm doing great, Will. Thank you for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. So, Lauren, tell us your journey. What was that journey like to get here to today? Tell us more about your book. What was the impetus to get that podcast? So what was Lauren Smith's journey to get here to today? I know it's a loaded question and probably a long one. So give us maybe the condensed version.
Sure, I'll try my best. I'd say what it looks like is a long path of broken hearts, except it's all the same heart, mine. It's felt like every time I was with someone new, I was expecting it to be different. Like I wouldn't be able, it was almost like I felt like with each new partner, I was expecting something different, but what I found was the same old story, the same old arguments. And then, yes, that same heart being broken over and over again, except that it wasn't just as simple as taking off, you know, how people say like, oh, it was like opening a wound, like taking off the scab. It wasn't just surface level. It was almost like with each relationship that failed, that wound was getting bigger and deeper. And I, in turn, was getting more and more scared to the point where at the beginning of the pandemic, I got broken up with, and it was so bad that time that it was almost like there was no more wound to wound. I was just like completely broken, and I was so scared to put my heart out there anymore because there was nothing left. So I just kind of gave up on dating for a little bit and took a pause to really assess, like, what is it that I'm doing? Because obviously I'm the common denominator, right? Like I could blame it on all these people, but there's a certain amount of responsibility for my choices. So I started this journey of reflection, of practicing mindful acceptance of how I was showing up. And it was a powerful, but slow and steady transformation process that resulted in me being here with you today, hopefully helping other people to avoid future heartache by really claiming a little bit more intention throughout the dating process.
Oh, no, that's interesting. I like the mindful, today's topic is mindful dating, and definitely I want to get more into that. But, it's funny. I think for some of us that had our heart broken or was with a partner that just probably didn't make sense for us, did you find that maybe we as people ignore red flags? Because at the beginning, sometimes the people that we're about to date or we want to date, up front, they tell us their red flags, probably without them knowing that they're giving us their red flags. Do
Yeah.
we tend to ignore that just because we might be A, infatuated, or B, lonely, or C, I hate to say desperate, but could it be any combination of those three that we just ignore the red flags?
Certainly, that and more. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we're attracted to the people that we are. And sometimes we're attracted to people that hurt us. And this is a whole different discussion that maybe we can come back to about how our childhood influences our choices and adult partners. But a big part of it is what you're saying is that we ignore these red flags sometimes because the need for connection and intimacy is sometimes overpowering the need for safety.
Mm.
So we might ignore the fact that someone isn't good for us just because we really want to connect. We want it to work. We're hopeful. And sometimes that fantasy of thinking, oh, one day it'll get better doesn't serve us because we're ignoring the truth of the matter in the present moment, which is there's red flags everywhere.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I think um one of the last comments, the need for intimacy. We might be lonely for a period of time. We got our friends, which is a great thing, but it's different when, it's that cold winter day and you're alone in the couch and you're like, man, you know what? It'd be nice to have someone next to me. So I think we ignore the red flags because again, we override maybe is it that we override our hearts or our mind to have that
Mm.
intimacy that we might not even get anywhere because that person is wrong for us? Is it a combination of both of the mind and heart that we ignore? I don't know. I always think it is that we ignore our heart, but not, you know, or so, let me rephrase it. We ignore our gut and let our heart take over when 99% of the time maybe our gut is correct and assuming that hey this person might not be the one, there's something not right there.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I just use different words. So
Okay.
while you're talking about heart and gut, in my book, I talk about it as emotions versus reasoning. Like we
Mm,
logically know on some level what red flags look like. We know what qualities or characteristics aren't going to be in alignment with our goals and our values. But emotionally, especially in that early phase of dating, that honeymoon phase, emotionally, we're probably going to pick the things that feel good, that
mm,
light us up, like on from a sexual standpoint and just like from like a mental engagement. Maybe we have that connection that we've been seeking, and this person feels good, but like you're saying in your gut or with your reasoning mind, you know they're not going to be
yeah.
good for you long term. So I think it's a question of like when you're dating, what's more important, feeling good now or taking a pause to say, what can I choose today that's going to help me feel good later as well?
That's deep. Wow. You know, emotions versus reasoning. I think that's probably better words than going with your gut over your heart. Yeah, I think that's much better. Um, So, Lauren, tell us a little bit more about mindful dating. So, what does that mean? How did you come to that conclusion about mindful dating? And is that something that all of us could use, or is that a selected few that could use? You know, I'm throwing that in there just in case.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that there's many ways that we can all find peace and healing, and mindfulness is certainly a way that is accessible to anybody if you feel drawn to it. Science has shown that it does in fact work. It's not quite as simple as everyone might believe the definition. So like when you hear the word mindful being used in common language, you're like, "Oh, be mindful of the traffic as you're making a right turn."
Yeah.
And they think that mindful means just awareness. But the way that I'm using mindfulness is awareness without judgment. So that second part says we're going to notice things that are happening in our dating lives. We're going to notice things about our partner, and we're going to see it as clearly as possible in the present moment and not say that it's wrong. We're not going to try to change it. We're not going to wish it that it will become something else in the future. We're really learning to accept our present moment experience as it is. The reason that that is so healing is because a lot of times when we make decisions to feel safe, meaning we, like when we ignore those red flags,
Yeah.
is because we feel uncomfortable in the present moment. So we're making decisions just so that we can feel good now. We're not thinking about the future. That leads us to see things in a fantasy light. We're seeing things the way that we want to see them so that we
Mm,
can avoid feeling bad now. But what if you learned to be okay with feeling bad? What decisions would you make differently? When you could learn that it's okay and it's safe to feel bad temporarily in order to create the kind of life that you want for yourself moving forward. Mindfulness is the habit that allows you to tweak that skill within yourself, to learn to be uncomfortable temporarily with whatever's coming up for you. Let it be with you. Don't try to change it. If you're feeling shame, if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling embarrassment, all these things are going to come up for you probably while you're dating. Don't run away from it. Don't craft fantasies in your mind to pretend that they're not there. Allow it to be with you because they're you, right?
yeah.
You want all parts of you to exist. You want to be able to show up into a relationship with someone saying, "Hi, this is me, good, bad, and ugly. I want to see your good, bad, and ugly as fast as possible so that we can establish whether or not we're going to be a match long term. And if we're not a match, fine. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with either of us. It just is what it is."
Wow. To me, uh, feeling good now. and all of a sudden you're going out with someone, and 2 months later or 3 months later, is there like a honeymoon phase or a dating honeymoon phase that after maybe 90 days, day 91, you start seeing the real person, and then you go to yourself like, holy shit, this is not the person that I met in January. Boy, in April, they're totally different now. They're not the same person. They're all of a sudden they're acting different. They're you know, the the affection has subsided a little bit. Is that what you mean by, I guess, as they say, feeling good now, then, let me feel bad now, then at least I know I could get out of this, and hey, we go our separate ways. At least we tried. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess that honeymoon phase, yeah, that's going to end eventually. Some people more quickly than others.
Right.
But the intensity of that honeymoon phase, or the accuracy, is really dependent on your conscious awareness as you're going through it. So scientifically, the chemistry of your brain does in fact change when you're in the honeymoon phase. There's all these different chemicals that are being released. These are feel good chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline. And couple that with the fact that the whole process of dating is just scientifically stressful. So you got
Yeah.
cortisol in the mix too. So
Right.
your emotional body, all those things that you're, quote, feeling physically, you really can't trust that as accurate data, because that is
Wow.
not your normal state, right? This is an atypical situation where your brain is a little bit different, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. Feel good chemicals are amazing. I'm not saying there's anything bad about the honeymoon phase. It's just that you have to be aware that this is happening in your brain. So when you have all of these feel good chemicals and you meet someone, then 8 months later, you're like, why did you change? Well, that chances are they probably never changed. They were probably the same person the whole time. The thing that changed was that your fantasy was no longer able to be sustained in your brain. Maybe because the chemicals aren't pumping as strongly, or maybe because something shifted where you didn't cling so tightly to that fantasy. Or maybe you're just getting fed up because the fantasy that you've been, quote, waiting for hasn't arrived. So that's
Mm,
part of it too. If you want to, what I call, survive the honeymoon phase, if you bring that mindful awareness, meaning you're going to accept everything that's happening without judgment, you're just going to notice it, you're just collecting data, then you'll have a better clarity of mind to be able to see the truth of the situation, to be able to really actually meet them without your expectations, meet them without your filters as clearly as you can. I mean, it's going to still be a little bit difficult with the chemicals, and we're all human. We project a little bit. That's fine. But mindful dating is truly a habit of reflecting, coming back as often as you can to say, what's really happening here? And I like to
mm.
do that after every date. I do a little journaling session with my book, and really makes time to check in. And I feel more confidence knowing that I'm doing the best that I can to see the situation, myself and the other person, as clearly as possible.
I love the part about journaling because, again, you're going out, and reflecting, because you're going out on a date. Some things might not click or whatever, and then at least you write it out and say, okay, this is what I could have done different, or maybe that other person could have done different. Is there steps that we should take to be mindfulness of who we're dating? Like, is there something that we should do at the beginning before we date a person, or as we dating them, then we look to be more mindful, if that makes sense?
I don't think you have to do anything to be prepared to be a
Okay.
mindful dater, because mindfulness happens now with a capital N.
Okay.
So you go out on that date and try as best you can. It's so hard as a human to, sometimes, especially me, I'm an anxious person. So I get wrapped up in my head a lot. Maybe something
Okay.
happens on the date, and then all of a sudden I spiral off, say, oh my gosh, why did I say that embarrassing thing? Or are they going to try to kiss me? What, like, I'm either stuck in the past or I'm thinking about the future. And
Right.
what you want to do is try to be as mindfully present, meaning you're accepting things in the date in the present
Mm,
moment without judgments, not judging yourself or the other person. You're just like, oh, okay, that happened. Mental note. And then after the date is over, then you come home and you sit in the journal. And this is the time when you can really grab all the data that you collected from your emotions and all the data that you collected from your reasoning mind, those two things that we were talking about earlier.
yeah.
You're going to get it all out and see where they overlap. That's like a Venn diagram. Where they overlap is like the mindful sweet spot. That's
Mm.
the balance place where you say, okay, how can I get my heart and my mind to agree on something about the truth of the situation? And then make a decision based off of that about whether or not you want to see them again.
I love that mindful sweet spot. Again, these are terms I never heard before, but I like the fact that we have to reflect back and think about the person that we went out with and find out like, hey, this is someone that I want to be with, or you're gonna text them, hey, I had a great time with you, but I don't think we're a fit, which I think it's a cop out when you do texting, but I guess it's simpler that way now with the age of social media and all that. Um, and we're talking with Lauren Smith. Today's topic is mindful dating. So, Lauren, going forward, right? Or what are you looking to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 months, especially with your dating habits and let's say your friends' dating habits? Like, what are you looking to maybe? I hate to say avoid, but let's use that word anyway.
I think it's perfectly admirable to be discerning. In fact, I would say it's necessary. If
Right.
you're
Especially
looking
in
for
this day
something
and
in your
age,
dating
right?
life,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's great to be picky. If you're just going to welcome everybody into your life, then you need to spend some time thinking about your standards. So that's a tough question. What do I want to accomplish for myself in my dating life? And what
Mm,
would I wish for others as well? Kind of like a universal.
yeah.
Well, I think that what I'm working on is learning to let go of attachments of how things work out. And a lot of times, the old anxious Lauren would say, "Oh, they didn't call me back," or "They ghosted me," or "They openly kindly said, 'I'm sorry, I'm not attracted to you.'" However it was delivered, rejection hurts as a
Yeah.
human. And our choice of how long we make that hurt or how deep we make that hurt is wrapped up in our receipt, like how we receive that rejection.
Yeah.
So my goal is to really remind myself that when things don't work out, or even when I'm first setting out to make a connection with someone, to really let go of the outcome and trust that whatever happens is not a reflection of my worth. If they don't choose me, it doesn't mean that I'm not choosable. It just means that they weren't for me. And the sooner that I can find that out by showing up authentic, by
Mm.
being as true to myself and in my integrity as possible, then the compatibility will expose itself so early that I can say, thank you, on to the next one, and not take it
Wow.
personally.
I love that. I love let go of the outcome. I think a lot of us, I know done this where, I might reflect back on, okay, what did I do? Maybe I didn't do this. But then I said, it's just what you said, let go of the outcome. Maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was them. Maybe they realized they weren't ready for someone like me or someone like you, whatever. So we had to let go. Now, I guess the toughest question is if we're dating and then we just realize that we might be dating a narcissist, which seems like the new term for 2023, 2022. And it's all about themselves. They don't ask us any questions like, hey, what do we like? What do we like to do? Can we spot that early on in that first, maybe second date, that it's pretty much all about them and not, us as a couple?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be easier to spot them when you have a habit of reflection.
Mm,
Or if you do find that you're regularly attracting those types of people, there's also something that you could do within yourself to figure out why. Why is it that you're finding these people to be interesting? Chances are it has to do with your childhood, right? Like
mm,
I'll speak on me actually because I do feel like I have a habit of getting involved with people that I wouldn't call them narcissistic necessarily, but they maybe are a little bit emotionally immature. They don't know how to really take
mm,
responsibility for their emotions and how their emotions are maybe causing problems in their life. And I think this might be a characteristic of narcissism as well. But at any rate, I found that a lot of times I would attract the same type of person. And I'm like, oh my God, it doesn't anybody here know how to control their anger or talk about their feelings or have
mm.
peaceful conflict, And it turns out that when I did some reflecting, it has to do with the way that I experienced love and connection as a child. Now, I love my mom, don't get me wrong, but she's a human too. We all have flaws.
Right,
And
right,
her
right.
mom didn't teach her the skills that she needed to regulate her emotions. And I grew up the oldest child, really felt like I had a lot of responsibility around the house. So, one of the things that I took it upon myself to do was to calm my mom down. So, when my mom was having a bad day, I'd be like, Mom, look, I made you a picture, be happy, you know?
Yeah.
And this type of dynamic of receiving love and giving love was actually really toxic because I am not responsible for my mom's emotional state. And even if I try to influence that, it's impossible. It is a losing battle, right?
Yeah.
Like that makes me feel unworthy as a child when I tried to cheer her up, but it wasn't possible. So now you're adding shame into the mix. Like, oh my God, not only do I have to take care of someone emotionally, if they're unhappy, it's my fault. Like that is terrible baggage that I then brought into all of my adult relationships. So the weird thing was when I discovered mindfulness and I finally was able to see the truth in myself, when I was able to say, like, Lauren, okay, I see what you're doing here. You're choosing these people that have some issues emotionally. They struggle with emotional regulation. You're choosing them because you feel helpful. You feel valuable when you can help them. But I needed to
Mm.
prove to myself that I am worthy of being loved and feeling loved without having to do that for people. So it was almost like I had to unlearn the belief about what I needed to be or do in order to be lovable. So there's a huge chunk of mindfulness that also has to do a lot with self acceptance, self love, learning that you need to accept and love yourself for who you are without judgment. And that when you can do that, you're going to start attracting different people.
You know,
It's gonna, and plus, when I see those people now, it's so easy for me to see them. I'm like, oh no, this person's complaining about their day again and blaming all their problems on their coworker. Red flag, I'm out of here.
yeah, no, and I like that because again, I remember I dated this woman and I just saw that she was like so unemotionally unavailable, emotionally unavailable. If that, I think that's it, right? Now I saw the red flags later on, and I did see red flags at the beginning of the relationship because she pretty much outed herself, but I let it go because I wanted to be with her. I did like her, but also
Yeah.
I just wasn't thinking correctly, but one of the things you said about making someone happy, it seems like that's another term I've been hearing is making someone happy. That shouldn't be our responsibility. I mean, no, no, you have to make yourself happy. If I can contribute, that'd be great. But at the end of the day, if I have to make you happy, then what that says about you? What are you looking for? Am I on the right track with that?
Yeah, I agree with you. And this reminds me of my goal recently of letting go of expectations,
Yeah.
letting go of the outcome,
Oh yeah.
because it really does put that the responsibility of happiness back on me. Because I
Mm.
used to think like a lot of us, especially people that grew up watching Disney movies or any romantic comedies,
Yeah.
that all I had to do was do absolutely no work, right? I just had to find the right person. That one day my soulmate, the one, would come along and everything would be perfect. That expectation set me up for a lot of suffering. And it
Mm.
prevented me from feeling powerful enough to make my own happiness. I could be happy now. I don't need my Prince Charming to arrive in order to be happy. And it also stops me too because it that's not actually a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship requires you to do self-reflection and say, "Oh crap, yeah, I was the one that messed up this time. We're all human. I'm going to love myself anyway and I'm going to repair because I value this relationship." But when you're waiting for your soulmate, the idea is that, "Oh, we got into a fight. I'm not changing. They're just not the right person for me, so I'm going to dump them and find the next one." It's
Yeah.
like you keep
Yeah.
yourself stuck in a limbo there. But when you can say, "Hey, I love myself enough to admit that I have flaws, and that's okay. Everybody has flaws. So let me sit with the feelings. Let me allow them to bubble up to the surface for a change instead of pushing them away." Then you can take a look at them and nurture them. Give them the love that they never got as a child. And
Mm.
that's going to be intensely healing. And the next time you go out to date, you're going to be a different person and you're going to attract the different types of people too.
Yeah, that's the key is attracting who we want to be, who we are. Because if you keep on attracting the same people over and over, you got to realize, okay, what is it that I'm doing wrong, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's picking these people. I mean, first of all, Lauren, I probably could talk to you for another 10 hours, you know. I really appreciate you coming on People on Dating Podcast. So before I let you go, talk more about your podcast.
Sure. Yeah. I'd love for you to all join me on Date in Peace. I took a lot about the honeymoon phase, of course, about mindful dating. And you can also find me on Instagram. I'm at MettaDate, METTADATE. Same goes, that's like the same handle for YouTube too. If you're already on YouTube, you can find me there. And of course, get my book on Amazon,
Yeah,
The
talk
Mindful
more.
Dating Journal.
Yeah, no, talk more about your book. Go ahead.
Sure. So when I first realized that I needed mindfulness to help me to like really monitor my dating decisions, I ended up making a form, like a spreadsheet that
Oh,
I
wow.
personally used. And I
Cool.
would go out on a date and like check myself after the date with this form. And it worked so good. I felt like I had a lot more trust in my decisions because I knew I was allocating that time to like really check myself. And I was like, this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. So I ended up reaching out to a therapist who lived across the country. And together, long distance, we turned it into what it is today, the Mindful Dating Journal.
All right, sounds good. And that's available on Amazon and where you could find books and all that. Yeah, I'll definitely put on the show
Yeah.
notes. Anything else you would like to promote?
No, just come check me out on my podcast. That's my favorite thing these days.
All right, sounds good. Well, again, Lauren, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Will. It was a lot of fun.
Yep, definitely. Bye bye.